excited to see all of you here. And I know that our guests are excited to have you here and answer questions that you might have. So we will have them speak, and then afterwards we will take questions from the floor. So think of them now, and they're also willing to answer parenting and marriage questions if you have those. But we'll try to stick to grad school tonight. So let me introduce our speakers, and we will get started. So Tim Cook, you may know his name, you may know his face, you may know his work. He graduated in 2017, and he is our residence director for the men. He recently earned his master's in arts in theology with concentrations in moral theology and evangelization and catechesis at Christendom Graduate School. He loves serving the students at Christendom and hopes to eventually teach and work in Catholic high school administration. He's also engaged to Alex, and it's really sweet. And we love them. So, and now we have our dynamic duo here. Luke Maschue is a native of Phoenix, Arizona, and is the third in his family to attend Christendom College. He's got a fan club, right? Luke came to Christendom with a background in Spanish and majored in classics with a minor in history. He wrote his thesis on the definition of anoma, did I say that correctly? In Aristotle's On Interpretation. Luke was accepted to the MA PhD program in Greek and Latin at Catholic University. Luke continues to study classical and late antique philosophy while recently focusing on medieval Latin poetry and its classical influences. Jane Maschue, née Adams, majored in history and classics at Christendom. She wrote her theses on the Jewish community of medieval Prague and the influence of Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy on Anselm. Jane remains interested in religion, intellectual life, and society in the Middle Ages, and Jewish-Christian relations in particular. Jane and Luke were married in August 2018. They welcomed their first child, Jude Atticus, on July 25th of this year. So we're going to welcome those two to the stage first, and then we'll have Tim later. So give them a round of applause, please.
We only have the one mic, so if you can't hear us, then shout at us and we'll speak louder.
Yeah, so just main points we talk about is if you are, one, if you're here at Christendom thinking about grad school, two, applying to grad school, and three, when you're in grad school. I would say those are main structures. So if you are thinking about grad school, I would say just quick points of advice is one, talk to your professors. Don't start thinking about grad school. If you're thinking about it, just go talk to your professors, talk about grad school, talk about your classes, talk about anything. I think one of the main reasons that I got interested in grad school and in just life and academics and is just from the role model that my professors in undergrad gave me, and my experience talking to them, talking about interesting ideas. I enjoyed classes, but it's that second level afterwards of communicating with, about these things outside of the classroom, almost making it more a part of your life. I would say one of the main reasons I thought I would go to grad school is because I really couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I worked a few jobs in just random various fields, and I worked on a farm. I was a lifeguard once, but and I thought it's actually a great advice that was given me once is just to know the difference that you can do those things. You can work any random job, and you can really like school, and you can just read books on your own, like outside of work. You can just do that as your own leisurely activities. But I think the big difference for me was that I saw making this a part of my professional life and making this something that I would be doing for the rest of my life, just 100%.
Yeah, I think it's something that you want to emphasize at the outset when you're trying to decide. It's really important, obviously, to do well in school and to have good grades. But just because you enjoy school and you're doing well in school, you can transfer that hard work into any career. But you really need to have a deep love of learning and a desire to do that, to continue learning and continue communicating what you learn, either in the classroom or as a researcher. You want to do that if you want to do that for the rest of your life. You want that to be your whole professional life. And it's not for everybody, and that's all right. But that sort of strikes a chord with you. That's, I think, how we both got interested in graduate school, particularly, obviously, from being here from experiencing the classes here, and seeing, especially talking to the professors here. So something that we would suggest practically is if you're thinking about this, find a professor that you really trust, who you look up to, and go and talk with them about their journey through graduate school, what made them decide to want to go, and how they're able to successfully get through the process, because it is a long and involved process, and so you have to be committed to it, and particularly because this is something that's very true of humanities grad school and is less true of other kinds of grad schools. So we should say at the outset that our experience has been in grad school and the humanities, and it's quite different from getting a professional degree. So if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you're going to go to grad school and you're going to be doing a lot similar things where you're intensively working, you're taking school to the next level, but you can expect more of a financial benefit from that at the end of that program than you necessarily can from going into the field of academics. You have to truly love it, because you're not going into it because you're going to make huge amounts of money. It's just, unless you end up being a superstar academic, but you're also not going to become a superstar academic.
Yeah, the thought on that too is if you're thinking you want to, I would want to go to grad school, but I have college debt first. I would almost pay off that because I don't want to go into this deeper debt, or don't want to let this loom over me. And I think that's the smart thing you find is just you have the academic drive. You're in school now, and you keep it. What's the word I'm looking for?
You just jump into it immediately.
You jump into it immediately. You defer your loans. It's a very smart thing to do. All of you can do it. You just defer your loans, go to graduate school, especially graduate school in the humanities. The difference is you are the best plan is being a fully funded student.
Yeah.
This is our job. I don't do anything other than school. I have so much more time for school. I remember going to undergrad, working 2-3 jobs, and then doing school at the same time. But the total difference is you are making this investment in being a professor and being a researcher. And that is just a drive that you take from your undergrad and put it into your graduate work.
And it has to be a whole different level from just doing well and getting good grades here in undergrad. And one thing we'll say too is when it comes to the question of money and loans, a really great way to figure out if you think you can go to grad school is to apply, and if you don't get funding, then you should not go to grad school in the humanities, because it does not make sense to make an investment to take out loans when you're trying to get into a field that does not have it's not like you're going to be setting yourself up necessarily for a huge financial payback at the end, especially because getting funding is the university's judgment that you will be able to make it through the program.
It's not that you shouldn't go. It's not that you shouldn't go if you don't get funding. It's just you should either apply again, seriously think. There are many people that have applied, not gotten it the first time, worked a year, applied again, gotten in. So
but wait until you get that funding, because you don't want to be it's a good sign that you might be taking on something that's not going to pay off for you in the end, because you don't want to take on loans. You need to wait until you get funding, as they are judging that you're ready to take on the program and complete it. Yeah. And they're making that investment.
A lot of it is from their position as accepting graduate students. They've done it many times. They'll read these applications and they'll see the potential that you have, and that is what they're judging from your applications. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Just strict.
So it sounds very harsh from the outset. We started with sort of the scary, here's how you might know if it's not right for you, because it's obviously not for everyone. But if this is something that you truly feel that you want to because you love it, and you feel that it's truly your a lower V kind of vocation, a smaller case V kind of vocation, then by all means go for it, apply, and start working. And so I think the first advice we'd give you is to start thinking about it as early as possible. I think both of us sort of felt like we thought of it, as soon as we started preparing, we thought, we should have been doing this months ago.
Yeah, if you're a sophomore, start talking to your professors and ask them questions about grad school. If you're a junior, if you're a sophomore and junior, just start looking at programs and start looking at different different
and it will make
fields.
it much less stressful in the end, because you won't feel you'll feel that you're very getting yourself prepared. So if you're a sophomore, you're not it's not too early to start thinking about it. Start preparing yourself. different people have different experiences with the GRE. Some people say, oh, I studied, shortly before and then took it and I was fine. Some people don't do as well as standardized tests. So if you know that that's something that you might have a harder time with, remember to devote enough time to that.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah. So I think most graduate programs, you have to take the GRE, not all of them. If you don't know what it is, it's, I forget what the acronym.
Graduate record exam.
Yes, and it's standardized tests like SAT, ACT, just for grad students. And when I was at Christendom, I don't know if this is true that they had, I don't know if it's still true that we had access or resources to free Yes. So, yes. So
Yes.
you have access to GRE study material. Start it as soon as you can. I started it a few months before I took the GRE, and I'm really bad at standardized tests. Jane's great at them. And so I could have benefited by so much more studying, I think. Also, go to the bathroom before you take the GRE.
It's really long.
That is one word of advice. Just trust me. Go to the bathroom before you take the GRE. Other things about graduate school application, you'll have to, the main thing that you want to think differently about is when you look at Christendom, I think a lot of people look at the school itself, look at the charism of the school, and when you're looking at graduate programs, it gets, like your professional life gets much more specialized, the programs themselves get much more specialized. So when you're applying to programs, you want to look first go to their websites, find programs, history, classics,
history,
English, literature, whatever you want to study. And you find the faculty members themselves. A lot of them will have bios of where they went, what they currently study, books they've written, articles they've written, conferences they've presented at. And you read those things and find if you are interested in what those people study, what those people do, that could be very, very well someone you may want to work with. I think, for example, when I was looking at different programs, I found, I'll just start with CUA. I found the professor, I ended up applying and saying I wanted to work with him. I work with him now. He went to school in Italy, and his research focuses are Plato and Aristotle and the reception of Plato and Aristotle in medieval and Byzantine philosophy. So just random things like that, For example,
I'm working with Dr. Kate Jansen, and she does religion society in the Middle Ages. And so part of my process of looking at different schools was going, through her bio and seeing this is the book that she's written. Here are the classes she often teaches. And I didn't actually end up going to this program, but I emailed several professors from programs I was interested in, and I had a great email exchange with one of the professors who we had very similar interests. We had a great conversation. She told me different things I would need to do to prepare for the program. I ended up not going to that program, but it was a great experience for me, just as getting into the world was emailing her, starting a relationship with her, and who knows, I'm still working on things in her field. We probably will end up meeting someday. It's good to think of specific faculty members and specific programs you're going to, less than, this school is just well known and I know that the school has a good reputation. And that's obviously important, but it's not the first consideration. You might say, I really want to go to Georgetown, like my dad went there and I think it would be great. But if there's no one at Georgetown who's specializing in what you're interested in, it's not going to be useful for you. Because ultimately what you're looking for is someone who's going to be your advisor as you're working on your dissertation, and you don't want to be working with someone who you don't have similar interests in. It just won't.
When you see it. Like I'll read someone's bio and it'll say I focus on pluperfect verbs from the 2nd century, and you think like I would beat my head against a wall if I studied under that professor. You're not going to want to do that. It's very simple. You find it's like reading like the blurbs of books you want to read. You find professors you want to meet. They're people. Like you go, you visit them, you talk to them. They're good. They can be lifelong friends with you. Those things also come into personal statements you write. Very common in grad school applications. You will write to a college and say, or a university and say, I want to be a part of this program. I want to work under so-and-so. My interests are in such and such that you heard in our introductions, things like that. They're not even really set in stone either. I remember applying, saying that I wanted to work on like philosophy or even like biblical studies, just random different specific like Pauline letters or or like Aristotle, Plato, the letters of Seneca, or things like that. Just I'm only speaking from my own experience, that aren't really things that are set in stone. You can go into grad school, find a program, find a different thing that you like, but it's mostly just the general character of loving the intellectual life and loving to make it a part of, like I said, a part of your professional life. You love teaching, you love reading, you love all of that work. It's not easy. You're gonna it's gonna get hard. It gets tiring. It gets it's
but
long.
That personal statement is there for you to show them who you are. And again, as Luke said, you're not sort of making a promise. What you're trying to do is give them an instruction to you, and it's something you want to tailor to the different programs you're applying to. So I applied to one program that was very strong in medieval philosophy, which is something that I've been interested in, and so I emphasized my philosophical background and interests. Another program was more focused on history of religion, and I emphasized my interest in that. And both of them had great professors that I would have been interested in working with. But you want to, you're not lying. What you're doing is you're showing them what you're going to bring to the table in their program. And so what you want to do with a personal statement is bring it to your professors and have someone read it for you. Have someone go over it, many times, because you want to
weeks, months in advance. Same with recommendation letters. Contact your professors 2 months in advance. They'll very much appreciate it.
Yeah. So just getting all that, it makes it a lot less stressful in the end if you can prepare for that early and revise all those materials over and over again. And the professors have knowledge about what people are looking for that we just don't have on the undergraduate level. So that was hugely helpful for us, and to have many people read through our personal statements and our writing samples. You're going to would be turning in a writing sample, most likely of your thesis, something long that you've written that shows your ability to do serious academic work, and have someone look over that. And even if you've already turned in your thesis, I think we've all had that experience of turning it in and finding a couple of mistakes. So.
Yeah. Don't worry about making it perfect. What was I thinking?
And then,
I was going to say, it's also it's the importance of having those applications ready, being a part of that process allows you time. Email, like as Jane said, email professors, especially in the United States. They're very good at replying to
I think
just
I
cold
know a
email.
guy at Oxford, because I don't think he really wanted me to write to him. But the lady I did write to was also in the UK, and she was very happy about it. So, some people might appreciate it, some might not. But
yeah, the importance is you want to know. It's a very different practical experience going to grad school from going to undergrad, because you want to know more about the technical aspects of a program. For one example, I walked on campus, and I think I found out 2 weeks in that my comprehensive exams involved, I think, 7 exams total just for my master's, and I had to read about 50 works in Latin and Greek, and then read about like 20 books maybe in the next year, 2 years, and I think any of like 3 or 4 essays. But I found out 2 weeks in, and I was very lucky that that's something I really was wanting to do. But you can find those things out later that I had applied to other programs where they, in classics, where they were more based on literature. They didn't focus much on the languages, and it was more about reading things in translation and talking about just the classical culture, as opposed to something at CUA. It is the Greek and Latin department. It's in the name. It's much more of a philological program. And when you go visit, you want to talk about those things. Or even when you send emails, you just say the skeleton of the program is there are going to be this many classes in this, required classes, these comprehensive exams. Mine is very structured, whereas Jane's is more open. Just to give you, we're both in the humanities. My program's 3 years for just a master's, and then more for the PhD. Jane's is 2 years, and your comps are different.
Yes, my comps are more. So Luke's, he has a very set list, as he said, whereas mine, I have to come up with the list myself. I have to, find the professors and put the whole exam together by myself. And so this is very different, and you need to be sure before you're going in.
Driven. You need to be self-motivated.
Self-motivated, and you need to know exactly what the program looks like that you're getting into. And those are all really just important questions to ask, and things that I don't think, they are things that we didn't necessarily think of as much when we were going.
Yeah, it's the difference between looking at the course schedule and seeing like, I don't know, human nature. That's a core class, but you have I don't know, Seneca, you have World War I, you have these things, you think, oh, I'm really interested in this stuff, like let me take this class. And it is active when you get higher and higher at Christendom, but there's a little bit more of a passive educational experience. Whereas when you're in graduate school, you will walk into a professor and say, I'm interested in studying Anselm of Canterbury. And he'll give you a list of a bibliography and say, read all these books, come back to me, ask some questions. And it's much more of that, as well as your own classwork that you choose less of.
So there's just more, you have to be more self-motivated. But we can talk about that when we get to advice.
Yeah.
Actually, funny transition
Is there
to
anything
advice.
else? Yeah.
I think that's everything. If anyone has any more questions about applications, I'm sure we may have missed something, so don't worry, because you feel free to ask us questions about the nitty-gritty process of applying.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Good. So when you're in graduate school, there are just a few important things to know about. It's a very different life from undergrad.
And also we should preface this by saying this is really our experience. So different people have different experiences. These are just the tips that we can offer from us being at CUA.
Yeah, I would say the importance is almost being relaxed, working on humility, and all these things, because there is almost because it's also a professional program, you find that you're in classes with people that also want to be researchers, want to be teachers, and there can be this subtle pressure to be impressive, be original, be almost like a celebrity in your own nerdy field. But no one actually has any idea of what they're doing until they get to
much later,
or even until they're at the end of their careers.
I think you kind of have this experience when you first get to grad school, where you walk into a room and everyone's talking about, I study this and this is my expertise, and they all sound like they very much have their lives together, and it can be very anxiety inducing because you feel like I don't know if I have my life together. I don't know. And it's important to just remember that everyone's figuring it out. And the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know. So it's okay to let some of that stress go.
As well, I was thinking it's important for the thing you actually forget about, because it's also professional development, is that you think I need to focus on my classes, I need to write this paper, and you almost kind of lose sight of your social life. It's a lot easier for us being married because, we
eat dinner together.
Our social life is mandatory, I can't. But it really is. But you can find these moments that we have friends that we don't see for weeks, because they'll say, I need to write this paper, I have these classes, I'm just so stressed. You guys are college students, you're stressed as well. But it's still the same rule applies. Of you do need certain fixed, healthy social outlets and social networks. You need like a network of support. Because grad school sometimes can be a very lonely place for people, because you feel like there's so much pressure to be productive, to be original. In especially graduate school in the humanities is a very intangible thing. You don't I remember working in a warehouse, and there's a number. You show up, you have a number of boxes you need to do, you need to box and put on a crate by the end of the day, but you don't really have those markers of productive value. So there's so much more social pressure, there's so much more anxiety, I think, that's put on students, and that's why you need these healthy social networks, social support.
A huge difference in grad school, as we were saying, is that you have to be very self-driven and motivated. So you're going to be, making sure that you complete the things you have to do. I mean, it's just even looking at a syllabus, it's different, because here you're going to have, many different kinds of opportunities to earn points or to earn your grade for a class. In grad school, often you walk in and it's 50% participation, 50% paper. So that paper is worth a lot, and you have to be very self-motivated to make that happen. The professor's not going to be, guiding you, leading you by the hand to write that paper. And you also have to be working on your professional development, which means writing papers for conferences, which is entirely self-motivating to make that happen yourself. That can be very anxiety-inducing, and honestly, mental health is a huge struggle for people in grad school. And so you need to know that going in, so that you can have strategies and know how to basically, to do that, to be self-motivated, to be moving forward in your professional career without allowing the pressure to make you unhappy, because there's no point in being in graduate school if it's making you unhappy.
Yeah, actually another test to see, if you like being in graduate school. If you're a senior, if you've already written your thesis, just imagine doing that like two to three times a semester. It happens sometimes. The page numbers are usually they vary. They're not as long. Conference papers are usually like 15 to 20 pages, so it's either like could be half the size, but you do it much more frequently, much more often. You do a lot, but the amount of research, the intense research that happens in the work you've done on your theses, it's that just throughout, nonstop. I think that's the point. If you like the academic life, if you want to pursue this stuff, we love what we do. It's an amazing life to just experience reading these beautiful, I wouldn't say beautiful, not beautiful prose, but just talking about just beautiful
ideas.
More
beautiful poetry than I do.
Yeah. But just talking about great ideas, talking about just very serious intellectual issues and struggles, and just trying to find the truth where it is, and it's very hard to find, and it's a very fun challenge.
Yes. So if you hated writing your thesis, you might not want to think about grad school. But if you secretly loved writing your thesis, then it might be for you.
Yes.
And it's okay if you got tired writing your thesis, because everybody gets tired writing a thesis. That does not mean that you're not good for graduate school if it tired you.
Yes, I would say also along those lines as well, you need to be disciplined. It's very important to be disciplined in grad school. You can't necessarily, I think in undergrad you can write papers the night before. You can't really pull it off as well in graduate school.
You ought not.
You ought not.
You will regret it.
Yeah, so there's just important small little details of getting disciplined. Having children makes you very disciplined, so I highly recommend it. Highly recommend getting married. But delete your Netflix account.
Yeah.
Don't get a
Get
TV.
rid of Netflix.
I would highly recommend reading like a fun book. I'm reading Jane Austen right now.
Read for 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes, right before you go to bed. You want to read something different than reading scholarly articles. It's very. You almost want it's like a chance to almost develop a very cultured like a sense of leisure, like trying to be leisurely again, instead of binge watching Netflix. I guess it's all about being disciplined and learning good habits.
So that's our advice. If that sounds appealing and not terrifying, we will definitely answer any questions that anyone has. And we're excited to meet those of you that we don't know. So thank you so much.
Hey.
Okay, so you all know who I am, I think. So Luke and Jane covered a lot of the really important things about grad school that really apply to any graduate school that you'd be going to. I also was in a humanities program. I did the Master's in Theology through the Christendom Graduate School of Notre Dame in Alexandria. I'm kind of representing a different level of graduate school than Luke and Jane. Luke and Jane, like Luke said, when you're in a program like theirs, you're in it because that's what your life is going to be dedicated to. Luke wants to be a professor. He's going all out in his studies and his research. For me, I wasn't quite as sure of what I wanted to do when I was finishing up senior year. I knew. Well, actually, I didn't know. By Christmas time, senior year, I did not know what my dream job was. I didn't know what field I wanted to go into. And I had applied for a couple jobs a little bit before Christmas. The one that I really wanted didn't work out, and I was just kind of devastated after Christmas break. I was just like, man, summer after graduation's coming. I don't know what I'm doing. This is not great. And my mom actually reminded me of something I had said a few years earlier about wanting to teach. I was like, I could see myself teaching, but it wasn't all out. This is definitely what I want to do. But I did use that kind of as my starting point. And after talking to people, realized that if I wanted to teach or if I wanted to work in academia or education, whether that's high school or something else, that it would be good to have some credentials. And so that was kind of how I came to find the Christendom Graduate School, and we're all at Christendom already. It's pretty easy to find it. And the difference with the Christendom Graduate Program is that it's much more flexible. A lot of people will have a full-time job at the same time as going through this program. So there are programs out there where you don't need to take the GRE, and they're not as rigorous. You're not going as in depth in your research, but you're getting the master's. It's just not quite as intense as what Luke and Jane are in. So I knew I did not want to take the GRE. I'm horrible at standardized testing. And since I didn't feel so strongly about one particular field, the Christendom Graduate School was attractive to me because I knew it didn't require the GRE. It was not crazy expensive. And it was solid. I know Christendom is so solid in its faithfulness to the magisterium. I knew that I wasn't going to get anything iffy in their theology program. And so since what I wanted to teach was probably something along the lines of Catholic high school, I figured what I would end up doing would either be a graduate program in education or theology. And I went with theology. So that's how I ended up in the Christendom Graduate Program. So there's different ways to approach a program like this one. And I know there are others out there in other fields than theology that are this flexible. So with a program like Christendom's, you can go all out, and within a year after graduation, you have your master's. Or you can have a full-time job and spread it out over a number of years and kind of take it at your own pace. And that's nice because the money side of it kind of goes along with that. So you pay by the class. So if you're taking 3 classes in one semester, you're paying for the 3 classes. If you decide to only take 1, then you're only paying for the 1. So anyway, for someone with a full-time job, you can spread it out. I had people in my class who completed it in 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. I was 2 years. There was one guy who did it over 8 years. So it's really at your own pace. But the nice thing is, at the end that you have that master's. And yeah, so obviously actually one thing I'll note is I decided to go through the Christendom Graduate Program before I applied for the residence director position. So one of the motivations for applying for this job actually was because it's Christendom's Graduate School, they would help pay for my education when I worked here. So the theology program was actually what I decided to do first. So I've been doing about 2 classes a semester while I'm working here with you guys during the school year, and then I take 3 classes over the summers. And so on that course, I graduated this past summer. I don't have my diploma yet because I'm still finishing my thesis, but it's just nice to know that even with a full-time job, if you're driven, you can get it done pretty quickly. But yeah, kind of echoing what Jane and Luke said, even in a program like this, you really do need to be very self-motivated, very driven, whether you are like super passionate about a specific topic or not. Especially when you have a full-time job on the side and the program can be kind of flexible. You need to be able to set due dates or deadlines for yourself. You need to be able to manage your time well. I had another thought and I'm forgetting what it was. Anyway, so for the Christendom Graduate School, the other nice thing about this program is it's challenging. The material is challenging, but you don't have to be super stressed about the grades because you have people in this program coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, maybe even people from other countries who don't speak English very well. And so the professors tend to grade fairly easly, but you still really do learn a lot if you are engaged in the material. So that's nice. Yeah, I think that's that. A lot of the advice I was going to give, Luke and Jane have mentioned already. Talk to your professors. Like, start thinking now about what your dream job is, what you want to do, and figure out sooner rather than later if graduate school is something that you would help or is even necessary for that field. And start trying to do research into different programs now and kind of figure out what your life will look like after graduation, whether you can apply for a job at the same time as doing school or if school will become your full-time job. Start practicing your time management. I know you're kind of forced to do that already, but if you're not good at it, you really do want to work on that before you enter into a graduate program. And so discipline is very necessary there. And yeah, seniors, if you are thinking about graduate school and you haven't started on your applications yet, like, do that sooner rather than later. Because even though you don't need to take the GRE for a program like the one I went through, there's still a full application, like the personal statement and writing samples, things like that. You want to make sure, letters of recommendation, those are all things that you want to get done sooner rather than later so that you can make sure that you're where you need to be after graduation. But yeah, I think that's all I have. So.
You guys can all come back up. Yes, this will be lovely. Awesome. Okay, so I am assuming that so many of you came out tonight because you want to know about grad school and you have a ton of questions, right? It wasn't because of the breakfast food, right? Right? We need to overbuy on breakfast food next time, I promise. All right, so as you guys think of questions, raise your hand. I'll kind of call on you and have them. You guys can take turns, or if whatever you want to do. You can both, all of you, answer the question every time. Aiden, let's start with you.
So if you're a freshman or sophomore, is it a good idea to like start contacting those graduate schools if you kind of have an idea of the graduate schools you want to look into? Is there an advantage to that?
Perhaps not, because you want to have something. You want to know what you don't need to know exactly what you're interested in, but for example, when I came into Christendom, I thought I wanted to study philosophy, and then I ended up changing to classics and history. And so I was very confused for about 2 years, and it wouldn't have probably been as fruitful for me at that point because I didn't know. But if you're, if you're confident that you know you actually want to study this particular thing with this particular professor, they might be surprised they're contacting them so early, but that's also something you can go talk to your professors about and say, I really think I want to study this, and then maybe if you have this much time, you can start, reading about it, reading the scholarship on it, and getting really sure that this is exactly what I want to study. And so it's not necessarily a huge benefit because, definitely like the very beginning of your senior year, yeah, go for it. Or even the end of your junior year, sure, you can think about it. But this is also a great time to make sure you know very particularly what you're interested in, so you're sure that this is the professor you might want to work with.
And talk to your professors now here, because they'll be able to kind of ask you questions or give you materials that will like kind of challenge what you're thinking about. And if you're still excited about it even after reading those things or answering those questions, then that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
So in applying, say that you haven't really looked alternately at the applications yet, and you know that they're due in the coming semester, what do I do now as a senior? As I'm looking at schools, but I'm not really super aware of the scholars, and I'm not sure what I should ask my professors like on those levels right
Go ahead.
Say no pressure. But yeah, start as soon as you can. The best thing to do would be go online, find programs. If you're thinking about, say, philosophy, go look at different schools of philosophy at different universities. Find their websites, find the professors, read. I mean, it's very, you know what you're interested, you know what you like, and you know what you don't. So you'll read something and it'll say like, my focus is on the ethics of Heidegger and such, and you think, no, that's not really my style. You'll say like, I really love like Kantian epistemology, and you say that's my thing. Like I want to read that every day for the rest of my life. But that's a similar thing. And then for applications, they'd say just start as soon as you can. The most important things to work on over a long period of time. Recommendation letters, you don't have much say in it. Like, I mean, your professors know you or they don't. If they don't know you that well, it'd be kind of like go to the professors you know, and they usually know what to write. Unless some professors are very relaxed about it and say, tell me what you want to write. It's a very different experience. So talk to your professors. For personal statements are the one thing that you want to start soon and be drafting, rewriting, and those are usually structured with your own interests and with the interests of the professors you find. So that's the big thing, is just go look. You'll see it.
Well, if you're a senior, presumably you're also planning your thesis. So that's something to think about, because you want your thesis to be your writing sample for your application. And so you want it to speak to things that you're interested in studying. That this professor will then read your thesis and say, this person writes so well, and they're so interesting, and they're interested in this thing. So that you can do that work at the same time that you're working on your thesis.
And the theses here are like a very good opportunity that a lot of other undergraduates don't have. We're trained very well here to write well. And like Luke and Jane said, there is a lot of writing in graduate school, even for a smaller program like Christendom's. Same thing, it's like 12 to 20 pages per paper. You're doing a lot of them. And my program even has an option for a thesis, like I said, and that can get up to 100 pages. And that's not a doctoral anything, it's just a master's. You don't have to do the thesis of the Christendom Graduate School, but I chose to in case I do want to do more schooling. The more writing you have, the better if you want to go further in like a master's or doctoral programs.
Yes. How important are extracurriculars at college for your application, and if so, what kind do you recommend?
One of our friends went to graduate school. His suggestion was do one extracurricular and do it very well. Different people have different personalities. I do think it's important to demonstrate that you can, balance different things in your life. That I think it's a very good thing to put on your, CV. But it's not. I wouldn't stress about it. I wouldn't be anxious that am I doing the right or wrong extracurriculars. Do the things that interest you. And presumably, if you're interested in graduate school, you're going to be, doing things like that are contribute to the intellectual life, but also other things too, like leadership opportunities and service opportunities.
Sports.
Those are good things. Yeah, sports.
You can do sports. You can still do sports and go to grad school.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be anxious about it. Is what I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yes. So when you take the SAT or ACT at grad school level, are the problem questions specific to the field of study you're going into or not?
No, not for the GRE. There's 3 sections:
There's reading, writing, and math.
Reading and math. Can tell you I did not do very well in math, and it was okay.
I did great on math.
I'm really bad at math. I'm worse than like 78% of America or whatever.
78% of those. So there's reading, writing, and math. Most of it is it's similar to the ACT, SAT, ACT. It's mostly a logic puzzle. It's all a game. You have to know how to solve the system. The writing is different. It'll give you some open-ended prompt, and you have to sit there and type on a computer. The one thing is you do have to type. I did not know that, and I'm not a fast typer.
Yeah, there are some locations where you can write, but you have to figure out where those are, because for certain people with disabilities, you can write longhand. But for the vast majority of test-taking sites, it's typed.
But yeah, it's very, it's probably lower college level math.
It's not even early. It's like high school.
Yeah, it's like high school math. The reading is anything from literature to science articles,
There's a lot of
academic
scientific
articles, those
It's
things.
really
It's just
reading
a
comprehension. So, you have to read something and then you have to demonstrate that you understood what you read, and you have a short amount of time to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. So how connected is your, the studies you focus on at Christendom here supposed to be to what you pursue in grad school?
that depends on the program. Mine are exactly the same. I did classics at Christendom and I do Greek and Latin. So a lot of my class structure is very similar. It involves, with a few different changes, like some basic courses are reading courses where I'll come and, work on translations, work and have more seminar style where I'll discuss, various random things. But there's also some practical courses that I would not even, I maybe thought of taking, like paleography and learning how to read manuscripts and just medieval and ancient handwriting. Or you take textual criticism and learning how books are made and various things like that. I would say some programs, thinking of Jake, what did Jake, I don't know,
History.
he did history and he did a master's in business. So they're not, you can go into a master's.
Jake Heiserman.
Oh,
Sorry. He did poli-sci.
Yeah, so our
they
friend Jake
both
did
did
poli-sci and then he went to a one-year master's in business. They can be completely unrelated. I know someone who he just graduated from my program. He did his undergrad in computer programming and then taught himself Greek and then went into a graduate program in Greek and Latin. And so it can be what you study and what you don't.
Yeah, if it's, especially if you're going into humanities, Christendom helps. For my program, I was able to do a double concentration because I had already taken a lot of the required classes in the undergrad. So that freed up. You still have to take the same amount of credit hours, but I was able to kind of replace those empty spots with another concentration. So that's why I was able to focus on both. So it'll depend on the program, like we said.
And
Are your chances of getting employed in a well-paid job better if you've gone to graduate school or not?
In general, if you have a higher level of education, your chances of getting paid more, I guess, are higher.
Well,
it depends on what
you're
you do,
talking
though.
about. So if you're talking about a professional degree, sure, like if you want to become a lawyer, you have to, go to law school. If you want to become a doctor, you have to go to medical school. However, for us in the humanities, the field is not, there's not a huge amount of jobs in the humanities. In fact, most professors, when you go into graduate school, will suggest that you work on various skills and don't set your heart on a tenure track, teaching position, because those are hard to come by often and can take a very long time to get. And so if your focus is on gainful employment and that is your number one goal, then I don't suggest you go get a PhD in the humanities.
But even if you're, it might not necessarily help you get paid more, but it might open up a bigger range of possibilities. Like just having that MA after your name will give you a lot more opportunities to apply for jobs. So there are a lot of jobs out there that just say master's degree required, and that's it. It doesn't say what kind. So even if it's not helping you get paid more, it might just open up more doors for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, one random, sorry, I just remembered it was being just in our programs would be teaching versus research assistants, or even what you did in your program.
Yeah.
Just another part of my program is I'm funded, they pay me to go to graduate school, but another aspect, I work for the university, and Jane and I do that in different ways. I'm a teaching assistant, so I have this position as, depending on the professor you get, I'm in a situation where I do most of the grading for classes. I grade papers, but I also run seminars. So I'll have almost like a small foot into teaching in a university environment. And that can be any classes in my own department, or sometimes you can get put in, be a teaching assistant for different departments. For myself, it would be either classics, even history, anthropology, things like that. Jane is a research assistant, so her job is just a little bit different. Yeah.
Oh, should I talk about? Oh, well, yes. This semester, I'm a research assistant for a professor who's writing a book. So I'm reading through her book for her and helping her edit it and learning about the process of publishing a book as a professor. And I'm also researching a topic for her. So just doing the nitty-gritty details of finding articles, finding books. I was a teaching assistant last semester for a class in the Vikings. That was also great. But yes, and that's an opportunity to.
It's
gain
a double
those
aspect.
skills.
Sometimes your programs are given, you're funded this much money as just a stipend for you being a graduate student. Other times they'll say, we will fund you, but you're also going to work for us. And it's just a half and half situation. And sometimes it's not even in, your own fields or things like that. I know people that work for the library, work for even just random administrative offices while they're doing, or they're assistants for different departments while they're in graduate school.
Yeah. So you can work while you're in graduate school, as Timmy said. Dr. Bruda?
Yeah, so question for all three of the panelists. What's one thing you wish somebody had told you about graduate school before you went?
I have things that people told me that I still didn't listen to, but I wish I'd listened to. Like I said, I'm working on my thesis. I'm still working on it. And I was told multiple times, like, make sure you pick a topic that you're like very dedicated to because it's gonna get old real fast. I was like, oh yeah, like sure, whatever. And I picked a topic that I thought I was all about, but it's a lot of work and it gets old really fast. So, if you don't like writing, that might not be the best thing for you.
Two things. One would be know the very practical, like the nuts and bolts of your programs, because they're very different. Like I said, in Timmy's program, you could go in for 1 to 8 years. My master's specifically is 3 years. My PhD coursework will be 2 years, and then after that, someone is the fastest person to have gone through my department is 7. Some people get through in 10. And the different things are you will be taking these courses, you will be reading these books, as opposed to I'm not sure, as opposed to like just different programs have different focuses, different different distribution of coursework versus comprehensive exams, things like that. Just when you go to grad school, it's much more practical and much more pragmatic than undergrad is. And I think other thing is go to the bathroom before you take the GRE. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wish that I'd I think something I really had to learn is that advice about not being too anxious and not allowing graduate school to steal your happiness, because I think that it's really easy to sort of get weighed down with everything that you're doing and feeling like you have a huge amount of responsibilities. And I wish someone had said to me, it's okay if you fail. Because I think that knowing that, which is something I feel that, well, it's kind of, I mean, it's funny to say, but it's very different after you have a kid, because then you feel like, well, even if I fail at everything, like I still got a kid. So, and that was something I wish I'd heard earlier, was that it's okay. This isn't the thing that makes you valuable or worthwhile.
Yeah, and especially in the humanities, if you're being funded, you're not paying a cent if you're a fully funded student. So it's okay if you leave. It's okay if you drop out.
It's not ideal.
It's not.
But it's okay.
You don't like.
You won't live in a
have
van
to,
down by the river.
Yeah, you don't.
And I think that actually makes it a little easier to succeed, to know that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I guess one thing that I would say is kind of know, like Luke is saying, know the nuts and bolts. Like specifically, I think the thing that I wish I had known more about was how my program ends. So a lot of programs have comprehensive exams. Other ones don't, but they have these big portfolios you have to put together. So knowing that when you're starting the program, if you can like plan and take notes and save your notes and like organize your projects as you go along, that will save you so much effort when you come to the end and you have to review all of those things. You have to organize a portfolio of all the work you did, things like that. So just planning ahead as you go through the program.
Talk to your professors, and not like during finals week when you really want to know like how you could do well. Like very early on, talk to them about bring in drafts of your papers. I never did that, but bring in like. But I mean, it's something I wish I could have done. Just bring in drafts of your papers early. Talk about them with like questions you have during class that you didn't want to like that were you ran out of time. Those things like that. Just like get to know them. You very much see your professors you have in undergrad as what graduate school is like. That's almost your first view at what it's like is those people who have taught you, and you almost see them as your role models. And as if you want to be like them, then it's very good signs that you may want to go to graduate school, if that makes sense.
So time management is huge. If you can start working on time management freshman year, you'll be set not just for graduate school, but for life in general. So.
I would echo what Luke was saying about the professors. If you're not sure of what you want to do after college, or maybe you're also like Luke and you don't want to take your paper drafts to your professors, this can be a reason to use their office hours. They're all, you've heard it a million times probably, and you're going to hear it a million times more, but like they want you to come to their offices. It's something I wish I had done more as a student. But when you can really get to know some of your professors, you'll be able to talk about these things more as you become more and more sure of what you're going to do, and they'll be able to give you great advice.
Do you have any recommendations for your application for becoming fully funded?
Most programs will consider you for funding with your regular application. At least that was my experience. And so you don't have to say anything special, like, I'm really poor, give me money. And they know, most programs that we apply to in the humanities, they know that that's what's going to make or break in many cases, is whether you get full funding or not. The best thing to do is when you're applying, ask. Don't be afraid to say, how do I best apply for funding? And if there's something particular to that program, they'll let you know.
And sometimes you can even be bold and say if you get accepted somewhere, but you want to go to somewhere else, but somewhere else didn't give you funding, you can tell them I have other options if there's leverage.
I happen to know someone in this audience who did that. Got their dream school.
But it does work. And also visit your professors. Just show them to your professors. They'll read them. They've gone through graduate school. They've read these things. They'll help you.
Who else? Who else has a question? Yeah.
What's the language proficiency you'll need to put on some modern languages such as French or German in a field which is directly related to classics?
Pick one now, French or German. It will stand you in good stead. I mean, you can pick French; it's easier. Yeah, you're gonna want, you're gonna want, which I didn't do and I sort of regretted, but you're gonna want one language at least going in. It will make your life much, much easier. So depending on what you're doing, if you want to do classics, obviously you have to have Greek and Latin. German's very important. French is also important. So
it depends on the program. So philosophy would be French, German, or an ancient language, very much. My program is mandatory German and French, and on top of that, Latin, Greek, German, French, and then any language I use to study. So it's very hard to tell what that is. So something very easy, Jewish-Christian relations is Hebrew. You have to learn modern Hebrew. For myself, sometimes you have to figure it out. There are some authors whose specialty, there's some authors in Latin and Greek whose main hubs of I don't know how to describe it. Like if you study so-and-so, that's very much done in the Netherlands, and you'd also need to learn Dutch. And you kind of just need to figure these things out. Like if you study Linear B, for example, if you want to study like very, very ancient Greek, you need to learn Spanish because a lot of very good people that study Linear B do Spanish. There's some, like Ammianus Marcellinus is some Latin historian, very popular in the Netherlands. You need to learn Dutch. So you kind of just need to know the program, know different things. You kind of figure it out as you go.
just learn French.
French and German, definitely.
Start French. If you're going to start now, I suggest starting with French because it's very useful for all of them. And you don't know if you're going to want to do Linear B. So, I mean, if you do, that's great.
More questions? Oh, yes.
Just for you two, I have a question about your particular situations because oftentimes when people think about going to grad school, they think I have to be single when I go into grad school and
It's great. It's
Yeah.
great. Like don't
Marriage is
like,
awesome.
yeah, don't let anyone tell you you should wait to get married, wait to have children when you're in grad school.
Ladies, don't let anyone tell you you have to be like a man to do grad school, because that's not true. You can be a woman who has babies, which is what women do, and still do grad school. So don't let anyone tell you that.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to add about being married
Um,
and balancing?
That time management is also really important for that, and I think it's also key that we put our marriage first. So I could see people truly doing harm to their marriage if they have an attitude that this paper is more important than being with my spouse as they need me.
Or
So
even
marriage always has to come first.
it's different too because we're both in grad school. Say if you are in grad school and your spouse isn't, it's very important to, because graduate school is a very social environment. You're meeting a lot of new people, getting very much. It's very much a networking environment as well, that you almost find the social group that your spouse may not be a part of. So it's very important to almost host people, bring people into your house,
Yeah.
almost.
You don't want to live two lives. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we knew people who are graduate students. One is at Seaway and one is at a different university in the area. And it's very important that they are a package deal. They are together. They spend time together. We know him in the office. And it's good that they're not living two separate lives, because that could be unhealthy for their marriage.
Other questions? Are you guys willing to stay around for a little bit, talk individually, answer questions you're scared to ask? Oh, yes, Michael. Go for it.
In the context of your graduate studies, are you ready when you went to Christendom?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. There's, especially in general, my reading skills and my writing skills are great after having gone to Christendom. I was blown away by like what I was capable of and what I was, because one of the things when you go to different things, you'll be reading a book a week, 200, sometimes even 400-page book a week. Is specifically in Greek and Latin. It was great. I was very well prepared coming from Christendom and going into Seaway.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's give them a round of applause.